One of my favorite things about modern gaming is how many awesome 8-bit games are still being made that are inspired by the incredible games we all grew up with. I love how so many of them hit the mainstream. Stuff like Celeste playing in the background here prove that these old style games can still be extremely relevant in the modern era. But you don't need me to tell you about things like Celeste and Shovel Knight. You already know about those games. I want to cover a few really obscure 8-bit style games that you almost definitely have not heard of. So let me know some other really great obscure games that aren't on this list. Leave a like, subscribe, and let's get into it. Our first game is clearly inspired by The Legend of Kage, or The Legend of Kage, however you choose to say it. One of the most fun things about the early era of gaming is no one really knew how to pronounce anything, and The Legend of Kage was a perfect example of that. It was also a really unique game that didn't really play like anything else on the system. It had huge jumps and a large sense of scale. Super Shinobi Den plays very similar. It even starts off the same. A little ninja swoops down and carries off your girl, and you run through a forest with a really short sword, unlimited shurikens, and a really high jump. The action is fast and intense as enemies come pouring at you in every direction. There are tons of projectiles flying everywhere, but your sword can deflect or block you from any ranged attack with proper timing. After you get out of the obligatory forest, the game does deviate with some more interesting modern locales like a skyscraper, a city, and it all culminates on a large highway chase that has you literally running after a speeding car to rescue your kidnapped girl. There are boss fights at the end of every level as well, and include things like demons, tanks, and helicopter. It's heavily inspired by the old score chaser philosophy arcade games. You get unlimited continues, and you spawn right from where you die, so anybody could beat it by just kind of running through, but respawning costs you half your points. You also have unlimited throwing stars, but each one you throw costs you 200 points. You can amass combos by killing enemies, destroying backgrounds, and reflecting projectiles. The higher your combo, the more your score multiplier increases. It's a cool concept, as it is a game that anybody could beat, and at the same time, there's that old school challenge there for people who want it. If you're a fan of Legend of Kage, definitely give this game a whirl. It does a great job of capturing the magic of that game while modernizing it and adding enough new elements to make it feel fresh. Sir Noggin takes heavy inspiration from the Master System. It is evident in the cover art, which has that white background that you see on those cases. Aren't those things ugly? I really think a big reason Sega lost the early console wars was just how unappealing Master System boxes are. Just compare one to the average cover art on the Nintendo. I really think as ugly as the original Mega Man's box art is, it's still better than almost anything on the Master System. Alright, enough of that, let's get back to the game. Graphically, this is a good looking game, with clearly inspired Sega graphics. The backgrounds and stage layouts look like they could be ripped right out of Sonic. And the character sprite is almost like Wonder Boy with a giant sword and a big noggin. I never really was into the Master System, but I still appreciate this game's aesthetic. Gameplay is simple and fun. You have a basic sword attack, and you get a variety of sub-weapons like boomerangs and bombs. Your shield is not just for show. If you are standing completely still, you will block incoming projectiles, which comes in handy quite often. It's a really easy game. There are 7 worlds divided into 3 zones each, and each end in a boss. I only died one time in my first playthrough, so while the challenge is not there, I still had a good time with it. The level design is varied, and includes everything from your token ice levels to bouncy mushroom platformy stuff, all the things you kind of expect to see in the classics. Boss fights are cute and generally pretty simple, with my only death coming from the final boss. But sometimes it's nice to just kick back and play a game that is easy and fun. This is perfect for a little kid. In fact, my 4-year-old daughter sat on my lap and watched me play through the whole thing, and she absolutely loved it. But it's also good for anyone just looking for a simple, good time. I love Russian Attack. It was one of the earliest NES games I played, and it really is very unique. I can't think of any game that plays quite like it. It's almost like a kung fu in a way. You run to the side and enemies come rushing at you and you stab them with your knife. Different enemies have different attack patterns, and you occasionally get some extra weapons like a bazooka. It is really fun, straightforward action, and one of early Konami's finest, which brings me to Zombies Attack, a game heavily inspired by Russian Attack, only here, the enemies are zombies and monsters instead of communists. Gameplay is extremely familiar. The main character looks and moves exactly like the guy from Russian Attack. Your primary weapon is a knife, and by holding down the button, you can stab rapidly, which is really nice for old folks like me with developing carpal tunnel syndrome. There is a second character available as well, who attacks with a hammer instead of a knife. It is much slower, but also does more damage per hit. The structure here is just like the Konami classic. You run to the side, and zombies come pouring at you, and you stab everything in your path. Fans of rush and attack will love this game, but they expand the formula in a number of ways. The weapon selection here is pretty big. All of them are limited use, but you get a nice variety. Everything from pistols to machine guns and even a flamethrower. They are all fun and do a great job of cutting down the zombie mobs. You also get a wide variety of zombies to fight. The standard blue ones just run straight at you, while the red ones jump at you, like the enemies that use a drop kick you from rush and attack. But there is a much greater variety of enemies on display as well, including buff zombies who take more hits to kill and birds, because you always need birds in a retro-inspired game. There's also some platforming here, nothing too tough. There are definitely some parts that are tricky and add a little extra layer to the gameplay. As always, knockback is your greatest threat, with many enemies instantly knocking you to your death. Each of the 6 levels also ends in a boss fight. I love these. They're really challenging with fun patterns and huge life bars. This little snake guy here killed me about 1,000,000 times. It was really satisfying to finally take him down on my last hit point. It's not really a long game, 6 stages, but take about an hour or so to finish, but for the full retail price of $5, I think this is a no-brainer. If you love 8-bit action games, particularly Rush and Attack, you would definitely enjoy this one. Clash Force is a really fun action platformer that definitely takes inspiration from Bucky O'Hare. At least graphically it does. The character sprites are drawn very similar to that game, with nice little stubby adorable animal sprites. And you wouldn't be too far off to think this was some spin-off that was cancelled at the end of its first season. It's a pretty cool game. There are lots of things to shoot and a really fun arsenal to use. You get a nice variety of spread guns, which is always nice. We all love a good spread shot, as well as a few other upgrades to your basic pea shooter. You have to be very careful though. You get 3 hit points. When you take damage, you lose your weapon and it's back to the basic gun. You can get a shield, kind of like the one seen in Sonic, that protects you from a hit as well as lets you retain your weapon, but you definitely want to play carefully, as having the extra arsenal makes the game much easier. There are 21 levels in this game and a boss fight at the end of each of the 4 worlds. You have unlimited continues, and the game isn't too difficult, but one of the last stages definitely is. This part here kinda reminded me when you have to ride a missile in Contra 3, but it's just so much harder. I must have died 1,000,000 times before I finally made it through. Outside of that, it's not too bad though. It's a really fun game that has definitely been forgotten, much like its source material. But if you like a good action shooter done in an 8-bit style, give it a whirl. If you're a fan of Bucky O'Hare, I think you'll appreciate it even more, but either way, it's a good time. Jet Gunner Refueled is an 8-bit action platformer that is a sequel to an indie game released over a decade ago. There are 20 levels, which are a mix of standard platforming and horizontal shooting levels. The twist is you don't have a standard jump. Instead, you have a jetpack. Holding the jump button propels you into the air, or you can tap the button to keep more of a steady, horizontal movement, but you are limited by a fuel meter. This thing refuels quickly, so you just have to land for a second to have it fill up. Although you don't have unlimited flight, you do get to travel a good distance before landing, and the jetpack leads to some really good platforming challenges that would not be possible with the standard jump. Every level is tailor-made for this jetpack. There are some really tough moments here as well. You might find yourself pushed back by wind, trying to traverse a giant crevice. There are little platforms to land on, but the wind is pushing you back. You have no choice but to land to refuel, or try and navigate this nightmare section of spikes here. This was really difficult. The level of precision is something I just did not possess. Luckily, spikes don't kill you in one hit, so you have a little wiggle room to mess up. Moments like these are sprinkled throughout the entire game, and add a great deal of tension to the moment-to-moment gameplay. The inclusion of the jetpack also leads to many sections that have you either vertically scrolling up or down a treacherous chasm, usually riddled with enemies and other hazards. That's some heavy knockback, but you recover from it quickly. There were a ton of times where I was knocked back into a pit, but I was able to recover and fly out without falling to my death. In fact, I can't think of a single time in the entire game where I actually got knocked back to my death. The jetpack was a savior and helped me recover from all the PTSD of pit knockbacks that I've experienced experienced in my life. That's not to say the game is easy though, because it's still pretty tough. The game is constantly throwing new challenges at you, and there is a smooth difficulty curve. Checkpoints are not too frequent. Most levels have a checkpoint every 3 screens or so, with each screen being a fairly decent length. Dying will often set you back, but it's not too punishing. I like that it added an extra layer of tension to each death, and there was always a checkpoint right before the boss to prevent frustration. There are a good variety of different weapons in this game, and you get a little option that flies next to you with various firing patterns. There is a timer attached to this that is always counting down, but by killing enemies, you can collect pickups to extend the time by 1 second, as well as find time extensions laying around the levels. These were super useful, but you had to keep moving and killing enemies or the time would expire, and this mechanic gave the game a great sense of speed and urgency. I think the game does a fantastic job at moving along quickly. It's a fast and frantic action shooter that mixes in some fun shmup stages, great boss battles, and even includes an entirely free Game Boy version of the main game with its own 6-level campaign. It sells for $6 on Steam, and it is a steal for that price.